I just stumbled on a video that really has me thinking and questioning, and I would love to know your opinion on it.
When I was a baby leftist, I would get really frustrated because I didn't understand why groups like Socialist Alternative required what I felt was such a high barrier to entry. Like, if you're not familiar with the DSA, mostly you can just sign up and be a card carrying member of the DSA. But with groups like Socialist Alternative, typically you have to do reading and maybe meet with a member or two just to confirm that we're all on the same page, because you don't want to have major fundamental differences with somebody in how you're approaching your work, because it's just not really, you just find another group that better aligns with your theory, right? But when I was a baby leftist, I was like, you guys, that's such a high barrier to entry. If you wanted people to join your organization, you need to make it as accessible as possible. Oh, was I so naive and silly. With this whole, what is leftism, liberalism debate or whatever, no wonder groups like Socialist Alternative want to make sure we all have at least some foundation of theory in common. Because if not, if you just let anybody join, then it just creates this chaos where you're not actually getting anything done, because you're doing this leftist infighting about theoretically what we believe our approach should be to improve material condition.
I'm going to tag that account here so you can go watch the whole video, especially the end, which I cut off, where they had some things to say about a certain creator and their opinion and their behavior online. I would love to know what you think of this. So my position as somebody who is a leftist, precisely because I'm an anti-capitalist, precisely because my ethics are earth care, people care, and fair share, and you cannot have any of those in a capitalist system. The very economic and political foundations of the United States violate all three of those ethics. I think we could create a society where we actually uphold those values. I am a registered Democrat. I frequently, whenever possible, vote DSA or Working Families Party. But I understand when we get to a national election that we only have two viable choices on the ballot. Right. I understand, as a permaculturist who believes we should get rid of billionaires and we should have redistribution of wealth and universal health care. We should have worker-owned cooperatives. And I could just keep going and keep going. So many of my positions are extremely antithetical to the American political landscape. And I recognize that whenever I vote, it's going to have to be harm reduction voting. I'm never, ever, ever going to get a candidate that aligns with the things that I truly, deeply care about on every single issue. I understand, living in this system, that my vote is pretty much always going to be about harm reduction. But I also understand that voting is not the end all and be all when it comes to transforming our society, when it comes to creating a better world. Permaculture is intensely political, but that doesn't mean that I think electoral politics is going to be our salvation, right? I hope I'm articulating that well. So anyway, this creator, I thought had a really interesting point, because I very much, right now in the fight against fascism, I take the big tent approach, which is I could disagree with you on just about anything, but if you will stand arm in arm with me against the Trump regime, then we can partner together. I like to say we can work together for this one discrete purpose of stopping the fascists. Actually, you have to like your position on other issues. We don't have to agree on anything else, but we can have one discrete goal. It doesn't mean I'm endorsing all of your other positions. It doesn't mean that I think you are not causing harm in other areas. But if you're truly committed to fighting the fascists, and I think a lot of establishment Democrats, they're, especially in leadership, they're really, really not. If you actually want to be an ally in the fight against fascism, then I will work with you. And I understand that I bring my baggage with me as an ex-evangelical who was for many, many years a member of the Presbyterian Church in America, a denomination that considers ourselves rather smug and intellectual. I shouldn't say ourselves, I'm no longer part of that denomination, but when I was in it, smug and intellectual. And damn, did we love just parsing down the tiniest, all of those fractures over just the tiniest minutia of doctrine. And at the time, I would get so frustrated. Why aren't we working with churches to help meet the needs of homeless folks in Portland? Or why aren't we working more with other churches toward environmental cleanups on the Columbia Slough, et cetera, et cetera? Why is it that we're not willing to partner with folks that we see as potentially contaminating us, right? A lot of that purity politics that's so pervasive in American society. Boy, it's in the Christian church, y'all. Woo, it's everywhere. Denominations will split off over the tiniest little thing. There will be massive infighting over the tiniest little thing. So I look at the political left in the United States, and so much of it is wow, this looks like the evangelical church. denominationalism, that factionalism was so important to crafting your identity. I would never have called myself an evangelical back when I was a Presbyterian. I would have absolutely said, oh, I'm from the Reformed tradition. I'm a Calvinist. I'm a Presbyterian. I would never have called myself an evangelical because it had a certain connotation. But I use that term now because I think it's approachable, understandable for a lot of people. But this creator's video, wow, it really struck me because I don't actually think that they're wrong. I actually don't think what they had to say is contradictory to my position either. And I do get frustrated with conversations. I had to block a whole lot of folks this week, including somebody that creator mentioned in their video, who like to say that they're leftists, but I'm like, you're very pro-capitalist. Like, what makes you a leftist? Because as much as we live in a world of post-truth politics, definitions actually still do matter. And I do think a lot of the reason for this infighting is, like that creator says, we don't have shared definitions. People want to be seen as not the fascist party, not Republican. And so they think that they are on the political left and that therefore they are a leftist. But a lot of those folks are centrists. A lot of those folks are, neoliberals who actually really love capitalism. They themselves really want to do a big capitalism. And so we end up with this kind of endless infighting, which I've definitely been guilty of participating in. Some motherfucker calls me a neoliberal and I will go off on them. Like, clearly you don't know shit about me, or you would not be using that term and thinking that it in any way applies to me. I definitely get my hackles up over that stuff. This creator was talking about joining Socialist Alternative and how not just anybody can join. You got to have like a little conversation. You have to read and make sure that you are like actually in alignment with what the goals and values of the group are. It's a little bit less inclusive, but that makes it so that there's less infighting because you don't have people joining your group who don't actually share your values. But that doesn't contradict the point that I made in this video that we can partner with people for a discrete goal, right? Because if you look right on Socialist Alternative's website, what we stand for, number one, fight Trump and the far right, right? So cool, let's partner to stop fascism. I mean, if you really want to get down to it, I agree with every single thing on their platform, even though I'm not a member. Let's just pretend there's things on there I didn't agree with. Their number one issue, fight Trump and the far right. Yeah, let's partner together. What does that look like? I guess I'm asking for, what does ecumenicalism look like on the political left? Or not just on the left, because I think some of the folks that we're talking about here are really centrist, and some of the folks are actually conservatives. If you look here in Oregon, there's a state representative, I think from the Tillamook area this week, who's a Republican who just changed his party affiliation because he can't support what the Trump regime is doing. But he's still like a classic Republican if you look at his beliefs and his platform. It really is right now fascist and anti-fascist. I'm doing this like big long arm. Fascist, anti-fascist. What does it look like to build a big tent and be really inclusive and say, hey, we're all here for one thing? We don't even have to like each other. How can we work together for this one goal and then we can part ways? Then we can have those debates on those other issues, because right now we can't debate those issues. We can't have any meaningful conversation about anything. We can't move the needle on much of anything until we stop fascism. I think this creator makes a really good point. When we are talking about organizing in general on the political left, part of what would help end some infighting is to have a shared understanding, shared goals. And I do think it's appropriate to limit your membership to people who actually have the same platform as you and actually want to use the same tactics as you, right? Because then it prevents the scenario that this creator talked about later in their video, where somebody who claims to be on the political left holds positions that clearly aren't, including telling other leftists, if you don't support the Democrats, then you're a Nazi. I think it also weeds out the grifters, the people who are on social media because they really wanted to be an actor or an influencer and they aren't really activists, right? If you're having an activist movement, a leftist activist movement, I think it's okay to say we're going to limit our membership to these shared values. But at the same time, how can we be ecumenical in our approach? How can we have interdenominationalism, right? How can we work with people who might be Republicans, right? Never Trumper Republicans, centrist folks, neoliberals, even though I just want to like shake them and scream about capitalism and how much it's exploiting and harming the planet and workers everywhere, whatever. Okay, I'm going to set all that aside and have self-control and say, cool, we got this one issue right now. We got to stop Trump. We got to stop the fascists. The infighting on the left is exhausting. Now, I will push back against other people on the left who are doing things that I think undermine the cause of stopping fascism. At the same time, I still want that big tent. So what do y'all think? What's the balance there? What does that look like?